Question for Mr. Stewart. By now, most of us have recognized there is a hidden heroin and OxyContin addiction problem in this region. We did the stories called Wasted Youth in the newspaper, which exposed it. You should know that as bad as the numbers were from 04 to 06, we've done the research from 06 to now. They are worse in terms of fatal and non-fatal overdoses for this region. We'll be doing those stories next month. But despite being at the epicenter of this issue, little to nothing has been done by the city to warn people. We want to know, to what extent do you think the mayor and/or city is responsible for helping people learn about and cope with this issue?
I think the mayor and leadership has enormous responsibility around this issue because it impacts residents. I mean, the point is, what's the purpose of being a leader in this community if you're not interested or you don't have a plan to tackle some of the present issues facing our community? And there is lots of talk in the media about the violent crimes in Brockton, which are enormous as well. But the reality is more of our young people are dying in the privacy of their bedrooms or at their friends' homes with needles in their arms than there are kids dying in the streets because of gunshot wounds. And I know that the media and sometimes even our leadership sort of focuses on the more sensational crimes. But true leadership and the role of the mayor is to make certain that every single challenge that we face, that our families face, are at the top of the list for this mayor. And so what would I do? I think there's opportunity in terms of making certain we talk about drug addiction differently. I mean, I mentioned when I was younger, I smoked a cigarette behind a building. It was probably one of the worst things that I had done. Fortunate for me, and when I grew up, that was probably one of the worst things you could do in terms of using drugs. Unfortunately, what happens is that kids will take risks, that the drugs are much more addictive than they were in the past. And clearly in Brockton, there's incredible accessibility to these very addictive drugs. And so government can do a couple things. One is to make certain we keep our streets safe and keep the drugs off the streets. Lock up those repeat criminals who are selling drugs to our kids. We need to talk about drug use differently from a leadership level so that parents are not afraid or embarrassed to go out and seek the resources that are there. Because if parents are embarrassed, and these are good parents, as I pointed out before, and through no fault of their own, their kid took a risk that went south, then the kids are not getting the resources they need. And so these kids, from my understanding, are the ones, in some cases, who are breaking into homes in neighborhoods that once didn't have burglary problems. And so dealing with the issue head on, making certain parents have access to resources and are empowered enough to go after those resources can have a multi-tiered effect on the quality of life in our neighborhoods. The state is offering the state is offering many grants up to $100,000 for cities like ours to develop programming around this issue, and I would aggressively pursue that money that's available.
You know, this is obviously a very serious issue, and it's also a very private issue. I've met with some very brave parents. Matter of fact, some of them who contributed to your series that was done at the Enterprise, and talked to them about what they think should be done, because they're the people on the front line, they're the people that live through it. And in many of our meetings that we've had with them, it became clear to me the one thing that they didn't want was publicity. They didn't want big citywide meetings. What they wanted to do was to address the basic needs that need to be accomplished. Some of those needs are revolved around services that are not provided in the community. As an example, there's no detox beds in the community for people under 18 years old. That's a critical need. People are talking about that to bring their children to New Hampshire or Wellesley or all these other places in order to do that. And we're working with a company that wants to build a detox in Brockton. And we've told them that if they want to do that, we're going to require that you work with the parents to provide some of these beds. You know, this isn't something that as a mayor you say, well, we want to build a big detox center, or we want to build any kind of detox center. And that's what the community need is, and that's something that the mayor needs to come out front on and take the tough stand and do what needs to be done to serve that service. In addition to that, one of the other things that I was told, and we've started some work on, is that the parents believe that we need to start in the schools, informing these people, these children, at a much younger age, of the problems with drugs and OxyContin and heroin and the things that are going on with it. And we're trying to work into the curriculum as young as the third grade to start working on this. I remember back in the days when, they used to have those commercials on TV where they showed the egg and they'd say, this is your brain, and then they'd show it in the frying pan and say, this is your brain on drugs. And those are the kinds of things that have impact and stick with people. And so we need to start teaching people at a younger age. The other thing that people that we're working on, that people have asked for, is we need to make our teachers aware of the signs of what these children need. And somebody's nodding off in class, or they look like they have a cold all the time. Those are signs of withdrawal on drugs. So those are the kinds of things. We just had a meeting over at the Stonehill College last week that the Attorney General came and spoke at, and the District Attorney and other people in the public safety community came together and met with teachers and service providers and discussed what things we need to do and how we're going to get them done. So the work is being done. It doesn't mean just because it's not always out in the public and that you can see it, does not mean that it's necessarily not being done. I think there's a lot being done. Is there enough being done? Absolutely not. We'll continue to work with the parents and the schools to make those issues, make people aware of these issues. Thank you.
Anything else? Well, I think the reality is that leadership isn't about talking about what could be done after the issue was discussed or after the questions were asked. Again, that's a bit disingenuous. And we know that the mayor said in the last debate that parents are at fault for the fact that the kids are on drugs. And that was his position before the preliminary. And we know that after that election, the mayor realized that those positions that were so out of touch were positions that were putting his political career in jeopardy. And so he's been smart enough to change his views. But that work has not been done. And I think that it's a very legitimate question. There was a major series done in this series around heroin use in our kids, and our city refused to respond. It almost ignored the issue. And that's been a pattern. And that is not leadership by my definition. And so, yeah, I've met with a number of parents. I attended actually a couple of meetings with Learn to Code, the organization out of one of our neighboring towns. And I have not, unfortunately, seen the mayor at any of those public functions where we saw lots of public officials from other cities who saw this as a paramount importance for the future of their towns. And representatives from Brockton were not there. And I see some folks in the room today who were at some of those public meetings in surrounding towns. So the resources are certainly there. There are folks who are fighting a good fight on the ground. But we need leadership to make certain that the full force of government, as much as possible, is backing those programs and backing those parents. And that work is not being done, unfortunately. It may be, that's the beauty of elections, because elections encourage people to be more accountable. So I think that's what we're seeing here.
Don't wait to read it in the paper to react to it. We work with this. When you're the mayor, you deal with these problems every single day. Our police officers are out there dealing with this problem every single day. The doctors and the presidents of the hospitals are dealing with this with the emergency rooms every single day. We're meeting with those people. They know what this is going on. This isn't something that just happened the day that the Enterprise wrote those articles. Those articles were very, very useful to the community because they allowed people to see it. And some of the parents, as I said before, were brave enough to come and tell their personal stories about that. But that doesn't mean that's the first time anybody became aware of it. It may have been the first time you became aware of it, but I've been dealing with this problem for not just since I've been mayor, but prior to that. As all people in government have. This is a problem that's been going on for years, and that we're working with the police department and the schools and everyone else to work on it. So it's not like it's that you have to wait for somebody to hit you on the head and tell you this is going on. If you're in this job, it's your responsibility to deal with these problems on a regular basis, which we do with the DA, with the courts, with the hospitals, and with the police chief. So if sometime you ever do become an elected official, you'll learn these things.
The mayor can tell me what he's initiated around this issue before the Enterprise article. I'd be interested in that. For the years that you've been in office, what have you initiated and started yourself?
Well, one of the things we initiated was
You, sir.
Yeah, me.
Okay.
Well, I'm the mayor. You keep forgetting that. I mean, you think I'm the candidate. You're the candidate. I'm the mayor. Let me just tell you what we have done is we have worked with the police department. We created the quality of life team, was a direct response to this, because when I went to the DA and said, we're going to start arresting these people without building a case, when they're on the street selling the drugs, we're going to take them off the street. Those are the kind of things that we would do. So there's a lot of things that I do as the mayor that you wouldn't be aware of. But the thing is that to insinuate or infer that somehow that, I'm not sensitive to this issue and all the other issues in the campaign. I mean, you've said from the beginning that everything that's bad in this city is my fault, and everything that's good has nothing to do with me. Well, you can't have it both ways. If I'm responsible for everything that's bad, you have to give me some credit for all the things that are good in the city.
I'm talking about specific